Hey, what's going on, everybody? My name is Rory Regan. My topic for my final paper was gender equality and gender stereotyping in female sports. Um, so, pretty much, I did um, that for some reason. Media looks at female sports that they are secondary to men. There's also the belief that women's sports are less important to men. Society even stereotypes women sometimes as lesbians just because they play sports. And then there's a final uh, issue that I'll raise is that there's a drastic pay gap between female and male athletes. For my mini literature review, I did an article on gender equality from the website UNESCO.org. This was the portrayal of women in sports media, the number of broadcasters, and coverage of women competitions in practice. This article discusses how women are not treated as equals in the sports and sports media world. Um, it also talks about media portraying or showing more male sports than there are female. Media also makes out male sports to be more dominating and competitive. Um, the second article was that how women should be treated equally in sports. I found this on silverstreakonline.com, and what this article was about was the media has much to do with the lack of coverage and overall promotion of female sports. Um, the article also discussed another interesting fact that teenage girls are 2 times more likely to drop out of sports than boys, and having as much media coverage as male athletes might encourage them to stay in sports. The third article was a study about professors Elaine Blind and Diane Taub. The study was conducted on the homophobia of women's sports, detailed uh, disempowerment of female athletes in current day media and sports worlds, especially in the current media and world, is making women feel stereotyped as lesbian simply by playing a sport. Um, Mainly women playing sports that are also played by men. They found in their study with 24 phone interviews with athletes, two major themes emerged. One was the silence surrounding the issue of lesbianism in women's sports, and two, athletes' internalization of societal stereotypes concerning lesbians and women athletes. Um, the fourth article I did was about the pay gap between female and male athletes. The results were astonishing. The amount that male athletes make compared to females. Um, One of the examples it used was the staggering pay gap between the highest paid players in men's and women's cricket in India. The Board of Control for Cricket in India, BCCI, pays Smriti Mandhana 68.5 thousand US dollars per annum, which is 7% of Virat Kohli's annual income of 952,000 US dollars. The article just shows how much male athletes make compared to females. This was just one of the examples. So then I did the explanation of theories. Cultural discourse analysis studies how communication is relayed and received back to one another in society. Kuta studies why and how human beings communicate with one another. It gives a better understanding of why people have stereotype slang and different meanings of communication and how it differs from one culture to another. Kuta has 5 modes that break down into different forms of communication. The first is theoretical mode, which is trying to understand why people do what they do. Um, the second is descriptive mode, which breaks down why cultures communicate the way that they do. Um, the third is interpretive mode, which is about uncovering the significance of this form of communication. And the fourth mode is comparative mode. This mode compares one form of communication to another. The fifth and final mode is called critical mode, and this mode studies the inequalities of one culture um, may have to cause this form of communication. Um, there's also 5 radiants. 5 radiants inside of CUDA. The first radiant is about being, personhood, and identity. What this radiant is about is Who am I slash who are we? Believe what beliefs are presumed to be a person here. Uh, the second radiant is about relating in relationships. It talks about how participants related, what is presumed before the communication, how does the communication affect the relationship. The third radiant is about acting, action, and practice. The notes are broken down as uh, what do participants believe that they are doing. The fourth radiant is feeling, emotion, and affection. Again, this radiant broken down into notes is how do participants feel about what happens in communication. The final radiant is dwelling and environment. The notes talk about this as what is their sense of place, how does this place matter in communication. There's also four stereotypes inside of CUDA. The first is individual function, which systematizes and simply information to protect individual belief system. Then collective function, which offers culturally accepted explanations for things. The third is epistemic function, which is to dehumanize, rationalize, or justifies behavior towards another person. The final is esteem-related functions, which are how one feels after acting a certain way towards someone. The methodology I have used to determine that there is gender stereotype is by researching scholarly sources. The 4 points focused on are gender equality, how women are not treated equally, homophobia towards women who play sports, and the pay gap between genders. The data shows glaring gender stereotype and discrimination towards female athletes. The media makes female athletes look lesser compared to male athletes. Um, so female the media makes female sports look to be less entertaining and not worth the public's time compared to sports. The marketing side does not invest as much in female sports as it does in male sports. Female uniforms are even more revealing and less protective than male uniforms. Female athletes are also stereotyped to be lesbians simply just because they play male sports. Um, this is all a description of what I found using the methodology. The CUDA is applied to the idea that gender gap is that I used was descriptive mode because based on the pure data alone, it's glaring that the discrimination is in fact there. The descriptive mode is the perfect way to dive deeper into gender stereotype and discrimination against female athletes. The data stated earlier shows how much female athletes are not considered to be equal to men in sports because of how the media portrays them. The media makes female sports to be less entertaining, does not cover them with the same intensity that does male sports. The only time that I found that it was during the Olympics, and even then, after the Olympics are done, the equality is dropped. The pay is back to being staggeringly different. These are all unfair stereotypes and discrimination towards female athletes. Um, so overall, my radiant that I thought was best applied here was the third radiant about acting, action, and practice. This is best applied to this because the media believes they highlight male sports in the marketing side. By putting down female athletes and developing these stereotypes, the media has put a stigma almost on female athletes as a whole. In conclusion, female athletes have been judged and given a stereotype because of their appearance, performance, and desire to play, and a level of pay is not acceptable. Even though female athletes put in just as much work as male athletes, they are stereotyped heavily. Male athletes do not encounter the same problem as female athletes and are paid more for performing the same job. The media chooses to cover male sports more than female sports due to a claim of increased performance and entertainment. We must look at these stereotypes and try to do better. Society needs to look at women as equal in sports and it currently does not in the current day and age. And if we are ever to see that true equality, women and men must be equal in sports since they both put in the same amount of time and effort, even though they are not paid the same and covered the same. Women are equal to men, and it is time the world of sports start viewing it similarly. I hope you enjoyed my article. The references that I've used were from UNESCO.org, silverstreakonline.com, js.org, sportsanddevelopment.org, notes from the CUDA theory on the PowerPoint slide, and stereotype theories from notes in class. Again, I hope you enjoyed this. Thank you for your time.